Oh, really? Okay, maybe I should bring my earphones.
I hear you.
I know. Okay, we good. Okay, that's better.
Ron, do you think you're at a disco? Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up.
Welcome back to Boston Black News. We're here on Dorchester, Cardinal Square. I'm a little out of tune here. Wait a second. Welcome to Boston Black News. It's April 1st. I just had to fool y'all a little bit. Make sure y'all didn't think I was off key. 300.
There you go. Go ahead.
51.
I'm waiting for that.
351 cities and towns, 22 neighborhoods in the city of Boston, 14 counties, 7 continents throughout the world, 50 states. We're here at Boston Black News. Right here, we talk about everything you want to except the Oscars. Oh, boy. But there is one good thing that happened at the Oscars that I really appreciate. The fact that Samuel Jackson did receive his Oscar and was presented by Denzel Washington. That was something to celebrate. Now, I know there's been a lot in the news about the other brothers, but we ain't going to talk about this right now. We have Singer here from GBH, and later we would have at our 8:30 hour the District Attorney Kevin Hayden, Zakia Lockie, one of our broadcast and community organizers, Corey Thompson from Mobius Builders is going to be here, and we're going to talk about black folk this morning. We'll be right back here at Boston Black News. So, Singer, what do you have for us? Welcome again.
Thank you, Ron.
Be here.
Thank you.
Man, this is so good, man, to see you again.
It is a pleasure to see you.
I missed you, actually.
I know. It's a couple of weeks away. I was sort of like, Ron. I'm sort of feeling like I haven't got my Ron love recently.
Yeah, because when I asked you to be on, I said, this is not a joke.
No, yeah, it's April Fools. I thought maybe it's like, bring the only fool you know.
He show up, only white guy, right? He called me square, like, yo.
Can I get a latte?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I wanted to come on your show because I wanted to make a public declaration here that Ron Bell was right, which I'm told is kind of uncommon, right? So this was a nice opportunity to really
pass the wall. Did you hear that? It's uncommon.
But Ron Bell was right. You had us on the show, I don't know, about a month ago, maybe six weeks ago, something like that, and we were telling you about this story that we were working on about agencies that were not only were they not missing their targets for having workforce diversity in the construction projects around the state, not only were these agencies not meeting their targets, but they couldn't provide us any proof that they've been counting.
Right.
It's like agencies are supposed to have all of their contractors declaring how many people of color, how many women they have working on these construction projects, but they weren't doing it, and they weren't tallying it, and nobody was keeping track. And you said to me at that morning, well, who's responsible for this? Shouldn't the auditor be looking into this?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know who's responsible.
Right.
A week later, we get a phone call from the auditor's office saying, hey, we've been investigating that too. You want to see our report?
Wow.
I was like, yes, I want to see your report. So they've got, and here it is, the auditor's report. And they said they investigated DCAM, the big construction agency that does basically, all the buildings in the state, not the roads, the vertical. And what the auditor said is basically they're not counting properly. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of projects that have 0 women, 0 people of color working on the project.
Like 0.
Like 0, none, 0.
Wow.
So the agency looks like it's meeting kind of close to meeting its overall goals of having minorities involved in the workforce, but only if you take these really big picture looks like, well, out of the however many hundred thousands of hours, yes, we have 9, 10, 12% people of color. Yeah, but on project by project, you go down and some of these have none.
Right.
And so the auditor really took him to task for not pushing each one of the contractors as they go. And what's interesting about this, of course, the DCAM has argued, well, this isn't a story because we're already fixing it. We're already working on it.
Right.
But what the auditor told us, and this gets to how Ron Bell's right, is that they see it as their role to be more aggressive at keeping agencies on track in this, particularly with all the COVID relief money coming.
Right.
They see it as their role to keep all these agencies on track to make sure they're meeting equity and diversity requirements.
Wow.
So, yes, Ron Bell, it is the auditor.
Thank you. Thank you. But I do have to say this. We had a guest here who is running for office, for the auditor's office, Christopher Dempsey. And I actually asked him what is his role as an auditor, because a lot of folks, constitutional officers, people don't pay attention.
Who
to
knows?
That. Mayors, governors, presidents, they vote in, city councilors, but Secretary of State, treasurer, auditor.
What do people do? Yeah.
What do you do? Yeah. And one of the things he did say about the agencies, so I wanted to make sure. So thank you for looking into that, man. Because it's not a surprise. I'm from Boston, and I've seen the change. I see the neighborhoods, how in Back Bay, you see all these folks that are not from here with a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, a whole lot of money, right?
Right.
And then you go right 2 miles away, Roxbury, South End. Well, not the South End, but some parts of the South End. Yeah. It's much different, and in the life expectancy and all that. But it's visual, and now it's factual. We have the report. Right. Wow.
Yeah, and now we have, and I feel sometimes like a broken record because, and I want to give you guys credit for, I'm getting a bunch of stories out of sitting here with you. Like when I come to Boston Black News, and we have these conversations, and people are calling in, your folks are giving us suggestions of stuff to write about, and it's turning out to be the right stories.
Wow.
And part of this is that you're seeing that in a way that I have not seen. First of all, I'm new to Boston, right? I've only been here 4 years, 4 years last week. And I just, all of this is new to me. I'm still learning about things. So, to give you an example, somebody from Boston Black News reached out to us and told us that there was a real racial divide going on at the UMass Boston campus in Dorchester. And we thought that was interesting, but we hadn't heard about it.
Okay.
And then we went and did some research on it, and sure enough, it was a terrific story that my colleague Kirk Carapezza did this week, that in fact, this is a university that on one hand is trying to rebrand itself as an anti-racist, health-promoting institution, and that in itself has become a controversy.
Wow.
And the university is having these sort of internal battles amongst faculty and staff and administration over, politics and who's being racist and who's accusing who of being racist. I mean, it's a very charged time on that campus, which I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been spending time with Boston Black News.
Yeah. Well, when
this for me, this is
that's like good, man.
The great part of this relationship.
Well, thank you, Pastor Wall.
Thank you, Pastor Wall, for bringing us here.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Well,
this first time he's bowed like that to me. All right, so that's not an April Fool bow, is it? But no, it's really good you say that, because in these institutions, again, the disconnect between the community and the institutions, right? And within them institutions, the way blacks and Latinos are treated, it's really not acceptable,
right?
So I think that it's important to point these what do you call it, inequities out. Yeah. It's important.
And the question I have, and this is the part that I'm really I just don't know, is we can keep pointing them out. But
what do we do?
But is something happening? Is it making change? And I don't know yet whether it's making change. Sometimes, like I said, I feel like a broken record, because I'm going to write another story saying this building was built with $1 billion and there was no black people working on it, and so was that building also built with $1 billion, no black people working on it. Like, sooner or later, you're just like, I'm not going to write the story again because it's boring.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a way to tell these stories about, how do you get to success?
Yeah.
How do you get to change? That's what I'm sort of now starting to think a lot about.
I mean, I remember what you had mentioned to Frank Farrell, who's in charge of the Black Male Commission. And one of the things that you had asked him is that what is going to happen is going to be funded in 6 months. What's going to be happening, as opposed to just sitting around collecting dust. So, and I'm actually happy.
Do we know? We're only 2 months in. Right? We got to give.
Yeah,
it 4
it's
more
still
months.
they have to actually identify the candidates. Right now, we're in the process of getting folks to sign. Well, actually, Michelle Wood's going to eventually be picking people to sit on the commission. So we'll wait and see. I mean, he's really a tireless worker. He's from the community. He's seen many things, and I think that he's a good choice for the role.
And you know, you do have to recognize that stuff takes time. I mean, obviously, you've worked in government long enough to know that government doesn't move fast, right?
It was too slow for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, wow. Someone got to check this. You got to check that. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's some of these positions need to be deleted because you need to check what I wrote, and this one has to check it and check it. And I'm like, by the time they get checked, then the issue we're trying to deal with explodes.
Right. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm interested in now, and this is completely off topic, but it's sort of this, is that we're about to get $4, $5, $6, whatever it is, $1 billion to build highways in the state. Right. There's supposed to be a new provision in state law saying that all those big projects have an environmental justice assessment to make sure that communities of color are not being disadvantaged by building this highway in their backyard.
Right.
But that's another layer of paper that has to be signed.
Exactly.
Right? That's going to delay the construction of that project. Is the state really going to stop and say, "Oh, okay, we'll wait a while and do this assessment"?
Yeah.
Or is the state going to be like, "Build the roads. We got the money now. Build the roads."
Right. Well, I do have a bit of sad notes on another note.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge and send my condolences to the Topol family. Sid Topol, a member of board of champions for Dunk the Vote, philanthropist. He's been a supporter. We did a march here that I helped organize in 2005. We marched from the First Church of Roxbury to the Boston Common with Congressman John Lewis and other elected officials. And Sid Topol was one of the major donors. So we send our condolences to Sid Topol, an alumni at Boston Latin, class of 1941, the founder of the cable box.
Wow.
Trans-Atlanta. They did a story in the Boston Globe where he and I, friends on the march, 40 years apart, Boston Latin School. Good man. And so when you talk about the racial gap, he definitely was racial justice pioneer. I mean, he's done great things for our community. Again, my condolences. Let his memory be a blessing. So, we wanted to talk a little bit about the no. There's free gas going on. I gotta tell people.
Free gas.
This is not a joke. Ernie Bach is giving away free gas in Norwood. I seen it on television. I seen a line, so it's really happening. It's not a joke. So don't get mad at me. But it's just a long line. They said it was a 1 mile line this morning. But I just want to give folks the heads up. If you're off work, if you're not working. Is it a joke?
I'm raising my hand.
What?
I want to say something. I'm raising my hand. Isn't that what we do on Zoom? We raise our hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we on Zoom?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just using the model.
Okay.
I have to leave because my car's out there, and I need to get some gas.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead. Is that a joke?
I
don't think that's a joke.
I'll tell you what, Pastor, I used to be a roadie. That's right. One of my past lives, I was a roadie. So if you need to go get gas, I'll run the board for you.
You always just mess up my broadcast. I just got back. Been out of the studio for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Just a second. Are you saying that if Singer took over the controls that he would mess it up?
I pretty much would.
No, this is Boston Black News. This ain't GBH. This ain't GBH. Don't mess it up now. We're trying to transform this industry so that it can be real. And
well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'm interested in you guys. How far into Boston Black News are we now? Maybe 6-8 months that you've been trying to broadcast Boston Black News as a standalone thing?
Well, legally, it's been about a year.
About a year.
Right? But we've actually started about a year. I would say about a year. Yeah. And for me, I said we give the news a different flavor. As far as people know who we are, they trust us. We're community organizers, preachers, and different vocations, and so we bring the touch, the interconnection. And I always was wondering. I know you and I had this discussion. Like I watched Lester Holt and others, and so I don't talk like that. And you say, well, the conversational here, the transaction here is really cool. We have a caller on the line, Boston Black News.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very interesting show. I have a couple of questions. Number one is, and I know you've just been here a few years, but there's been a long tradition where the press has not been seen as an agent of giving news, that they are actually involved in the politics. Mm-hmm. So whether it's coverage for a particular candidate or not. And generally, over the past 30 years, the media has been tied into the mayor's office. Mm-hmm. So generally, the mayor's candidate gets the most decent coverage. And so it's the subliminal influence that we're really not kind of aware of. And I think number one is I would like to see some kind of changes in examination there. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Boston media market, television-wise, the first time in the history of the whole Boston media market, there was an African-American man that's anchoring. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the lineups are starting to become speckled a little bit darker, right. But no anchors. No primary people that influence and actually change attitudes. I know in other cities, that's how a lot of the change in racial attitudes change. They see somebody that's providing them with the service or something like that and objective about it. So there's a skepticism and a cynicism about the total media market here.
And I think that's fair. Yeah. Let me address some of that. I think it's very fair and something we've thought a lot about. And if you're a regular listener to Boston Black News, you might have heard me talk about this before. Two things that we've done in the past 6 or 8 months at GBH is exactly to your point. Is that we. And also to Ron's point about the voice, my wife jokes at me, can you do the NPR voice, Boston's local NPR. You're right. But the point is exactly this: is that we think of ourselves as broadcasters, where we talk to you. Over the past year or so at GBH, we've really been thinking more about how can we listen to you, and how can we reflect more of the stories we are hearing from you, right? So we've done a couple of things. The first thing we did is we launched a source diversity survey where we ask all of our sources to provide us information about their own race, age, gender, and location, so that we can find out whether we're talking to enough people of color to tell their stories. Mm-hmm. So that's issue one. Issue two, we have a new host team on our morning radio program, Paris Alston and Jeremy Siegel, and they're speckled, I guess, as you describe it. One of them's white, one of them's black, and we are doing listening sessions in the communities with them to basically do some of this, is to hear back from the communities that we're covering and that we're trying to reach more of the stories that they think we should be telling, not just the stories that we think are important. I mean, obviously, sometimes we're going to say, well, that's not a story for everybody. I don't think it's a story we're going to cover. But we're really trying to listen more to communities, to get the stories of communities, and to, as you say, I think is exactly the right point, to get the voices of the community. So when you turn on our radio or you look on our TV, I'm hoping you're going to be seeing more people, hearing more people who sound like you and your neighbors, telling stories and talking about things that are more directly related to you. That's the goal. I mean, I can't come in here and tell you that, so we're done now, I've succeeded. But what I can tell you is that my bosses are very, very, very serious about it, and I'm excited about it, and we're making our efforts, baby steps, but we're making our efforts.
Is this is this Barry?
It is.
Okay. No, when Singer said listen, I said, well, this brother got a lot to say. So go ahead.
Doors open.
No. I have to say this, Barry. Do you remember being on the Milton Access TV, and you just kept talking, and the time ran out? And I was like, Barry, the time is over. So go ahead. Oh, you have the show. You have the floor.
Because you asked so many questions, I was trying to answer them. But I would say that from a coverage point of view, like the stories that I would like to see that would help the community. One about I just heard a fact that Boston's black community is the lowest percentage-wise black community voting in the country. Some investigation on that should be worth, because what's going to change?
Stop. Do that again. You're saying that the Boston black community votes at a lower rate than any other black community in the country?
Yeah, I've heard that from two different sources, credible sources. But if you look at the Boston black community, if you look at the percentages, they're averaging somewhere from 8% maybe to 18% or something like that, and that's in good years. So we have a problem with voting, and we need to change that culture. Part of in helping change that culture is the media. It's the media market. It's saying, well, you look at sides, and let's say you went outside and you would ask somebody, do you vote? And why don't you vote? Do you have the connection? Our problem is we haven't been able to convince our community that if you participate in this voting, you will get as much power as the Irish do. You will get as much power as the Italians do if you do this. We cannot do this on our own, because if you look at our community, it's black, but it's multi-black, right? You have blacks from the Caribbean, you have blacks from Africa, you have blacks from different places, and they all are not coming from the same place.
Right.
Some would say,
But the other thing, and I mentioned this to Singer a couple of months ago. We had a meeting, and we talked about possibly finding out where is Black Boston, because of gentrification, because of displacement or what have you. Where is Black Boston? Where are we? Are we in Brockton? Are we in Randolph with an F? It's really bad. But we need to find out, are they still registered here in Boston? That's the other piece.
And by the way,
and there were a number.
I'm sorry, Barry. Go ahead.
There were a number of purges. As you know, Ron, with you registering voting, and I was working with part of the solution, and we registered a lot of voters.
A whole bunch.
So they were knocked off the rolls.
Oh, yeah.
For lack of voting, is that the deal? Like after a couple of cycles, if you don't
kick you off?
Yeah. And also filling out the census.
And I will just, again, to give Boston Black News a little credit here, that conversation that we had with you, Ron, about sort of where are we, has spurred a lot of thought in our newsroom. And I've been downloading census data for the past month and a half or two, and there's some really interesting data, and we're hoping to do a pretty big project about that. In fact, I believe some of my colleagues are trying to follow some families who have left Dorchester and gone to Brockton. I'm really interested personally in Randolph, which if I did my math correctly, which I might not have, went from being 20% people of color 20 years ago to being like 70% people
at
of
least
color now.
Yeah.
So these are towns that have had dramatic transformations, and this gets to Barry's question: has that transformation led to a change in the power structure? Look at Everett, which is now what I think like 70%, 60% people of color.
Right.
But is the leadership, is the
Brockton?
And I think this is the next question that Barry, I'd like to talk to you some more after we're off the air, because this voting thing is a really interesting question. How do you is the problem that the city isn't making it easy enough to vote, or is the problem that we have not been able to explain to people why voting makes a difference, and tell them the stories about why they want to vote? I think we should talk more about that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, the city doesn't make any effort. What they basically do is they go around, they put up these signs with chains that we have seen for years.
And we actually,
and that's it.
Yeah, that's what we did in 2000. We have other callers, Barry. Thank you so much. I'll make a time so you can get a chance to talk to Singer offline.
Please stay in touch. I'm Paul_Singer at WGBH.org. So drop me a note.
And Paul, I also have a show every other Tuesday.
Cool.
Called Common Sense. We just started it, so I'm catching up to Ron and all those other people.
And you got a lot to say. We have a caller, Barry. Thank you so much, man. Okay, caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning. This is Jamal Crawford calling. How you doing?
Good, Jamal. How you doing, brother?
All right, peace. So I have a question about media coverage in general, but GBH specifically. I am somewhat a child of GBH.
Thank you.
The television station. I grew up, of course, as most kids, with Zoom and all the stuff that was featured there. And later on, as a young man, in my early activist community organizing days or whatever, was on Say Brother and all of those type of things. Later, Basic Black, what have you. Recently, there was a case where GBH and other media outlets really promoted leadership in my community, and they were really wrong. Now, is there any sense of accountability that media would come back and say, we promoted somebody as the greatest thing since sliced bread, and boy, did we get it wrong? Then they could begin to do correcting on the story, to then begin to investigate, to begin to tell the story of the many victims of whom I was one. And on top of that, in the course of that, I remember that at one point, I was actually spoken to in a very chastising tone by one of your reporters. And that's something that had never happened to me before. And it was funny because, once again, with this relationship that I've had with GBH over the years, it was funny how I instantly became the bad guy. And now that the truth has been revealed, once again, I wonder what the media's responsibility is for any level of accountability when promoting leadership in our communities.
Yeah.
And getting it wrong.
Right. So, without getting into any kind of details, because you and I can talk offline about that.
Yeah, because we have about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I will say that at every turn, obviously, the news media, all of us reporters, are going to be drawn to the people who have the microphone and who are doing the organizing. This is how we get sucked into becoming pawns of the mayor, right? Because they've got the microphone. So the question is, and I think the smart question is, how do we as reporters look for other people, other sources, other people to talk to, other ways to get the story, other than the person who has the microphone? And that's something we're learning all the time. But I'd like to talk more about your experience and make sure that we're on top of whatever corrections we need to make.
Thank you, but my question was accountability. Once a story goes out and then it is now shown to be incorrect, is there an accountability issue where the media should go back and correct it and address the issue?
If we were wrong, yes. If the situation is simply changed, maybe not. That's the question.
That's the answer. We have to go take a break. We're going to have DA Kevin Hayden here. He just stepped in the studio. Jamal, I'll make sure you get your answered offline.
Yep.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Boston Black News. We're here with singer from GBH, and we have our special guest this morning, District Attorney Kevin Hayden. He's here with us to talk about his campaign and his office and what they're doing. Welcome to Boston Black Newsman. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, pastors. How are you? Good to see you.
Good seeing you
Good
too.
to see everybody.
Well, this is your first time, I believe, here at Boston Black News.
Yes, it is.
And so I want you to introduce yourself to the community. Tell your story, where you're from. I know you and I had an interesting conversation
Sure.
this week. And
Sure. So, my name is Kevin Hayden. I am now your district attorney. Dedicated my life to 25 years of public service and 25 years of public service involving our criminal legal system. And just honestly and truly believe that I have been called for such a time as this to allow our office to truly engage with our community so that we can ensure public safety and health and wholeness in our communities while simultaneously addressing balanced and continued balanced criminal legal reform. I believe I have the breadth of experience over my 25 years that just uniquely equips me for this opportunity.
yeah, well, Pastor Wall and I, when we had a conversation with you earlier this week, what really struck me when you talked about what went on in the 90s, and I was like, Safe Neighborhood Initiative, and I don't know if that's when we met before, but let's talk about what can we do now that's not happening so that we can make progress and see the action taking place.
Sure. So that is where we met. So I spent 11 years in the DA's office as a prosecutor.
Right.
Most of that time was as the chief of the Safe Neighborhood Initiative, working on comprehensive intervention and prevention strategies to address crime and the causes of crime before it actually happens, so that we can hopefully prosecute less and have to enforce less. And we always used, and you'll recall, we always said intervention, prevention, and enforcement, right?
Right.
And there's a reason why intervention and prevention words came before enforcement, right? Because you got to do those things first. It's impossible for us as a community, as a society, to just enforce our way out of criminal issues that can plague our society. And so, I worked under two administrations. I was hired by Ralph Martin, now here as a DA, and having seen all the good work that now U.S. Attorney Rollins has done as well, I have a view of three administrations and how things have been done, and I think I have a good idea and a good viewpoint and a good experience with what the best practices from all three administrations are that can really address the issues that are before us. There is definitely, I think, an extent to which we can engage even further in community engagement and collaboration. I believe it's absolutely vital to the success of our criminal legal system, particularly in all of our communities, but particularly in our black and brown communities. If we're not truly and completely engaged with what's going on, if we don't know who our partners are, if we don't know where services are, if we don't know where our churches are, if we don't know where our civic associations are, and we're not truly and completely engaged in them, we can't possibly make the difference. The difference comes from transparency. People talk about transparency and they go, well, that means I need to know these numbers and that numbers and what you did here and what you did there. That's really just kind of scratching the surface.
Right.
Transparency comes from people really understanding each other and having a deep relationship. Trust comes from collaboration and working with our communities and the people in our communities. That takes a lot of hard work and a lot of time and effort. That's what we did in the 90s.
But so this is my question, D.A. Hayden, that, I come from Washington, D.C., where the city, I covered the city for a while, and we had a lot of these same conversations. And a lot of these things were done in the 90s. Are they no longer being done? Did we declare victory and move on? Do we need to restart things that had been done 20 years ago?
No, I'm not. I can't say that they're no longer being done. There are some things that have gone away. This Safe Neighborhood Initiative that we did back when I was in the DA's office does not exist anymore.
Right.
A lot of the important work of collaborations continues to go on. But I believe we can and should continue to go deeper. I believe that we can and should engage in employing the best practices from what we've done over the many years and bring that forward to now. So it's a matter of bringing everything together that we know is true. Because, look, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office here in Boston, not the one in Long Island, the one here in Boston, has been a flagship model for the entire nation for years, for a long, long time. Not just recently, but all the way back to when Ralph Martin, who was my boss when I first started in the DA's office, all the way back to then. We've been a flagship, and we can continue to be that flagship and that banner for the nation as long as we continue to move forward. So, for example, if we did a Safe Neighborhood Initiative now, we could employ some of those best practices, but we'd have to employ some of the things that are done now and that we know work now. Greater juvenile diversion programs than existed before, that sort of thing. So a Safe Neighborhood Initiative now wouldn't look the same as it did back then. It couldn't possibly. That was 2006. Now we're in 2022. It would have to be, a 2.0, a 2.2 sort of S&I. But could we bring that back, and should we? I think so, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we have some callers on the line. I really want to get them in. We only have a half hour, I believe.
Sure.
But caller, you're live on Boston Black News. And this is Detective Larry Ellison, one of our broadcasters. Detective, how are you this morning? Hello? Was I taking too long?
No, Ron.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me, Ron?
I can hear you, Larry.
Okay. So, good morning, G.A. Hayden.
Good morning.
I heard you yesterday at the press conference there in the officer-involved shooting, and I'm not asking you to speak to the particulars of that because that's still under investigation. But it was very refreshing to hear you say that, basically this is over. And I'm paraphrasing what you said because I think you are the right person at the right time, because I understood exactly what you meant, that people are going to be held accountable. Accountability does not always equate to punishment. And I think because I'm seeing people, a willingness to confront law enforcement in a way that I have not. And even with our young folks, I think they're setting them up for failure when we're basically signaling to them that they can do whatever they want to do and there are no consequences for their actions. Mm-hmm. And they become adults with that same mentality. So I want to thank you, first of all, for making that statement, because that's what I took away from your comment yesterday at that press conference.
Sure.
That's awesome. We have another caller on the line. Thank you, Larry. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Okay, I'm assuming that's me.
That's right, Kevin.
Reverend Kevin Peterson. Good morning, Ron. Congratulations for a show that continues to really enlighten Bostonians, particularly those in the black community.
Thank you.
I listen as often as I can, and I always learn something. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. D.A. Hayden, good morning. You may recall who I am. We sat around the Baker House table for Wednesday morning meetings when I was the interim director of the Baker House.
I remember.
About 10 years ago.
I remember. Good to hear the sound of your voice.
I'm so happy to have this opportunity to talk to you. So I have two questions. The first, which is DA, the former DA, set some protocols in terms of I will not prosecute policy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you will follow exactly in that line. My second question is to what degree are you thinking about during your candidacy of integrating civic engagement, civic literacy type of engagement in terms of the work of your office? So in other words, how would you be using your office to spruce up the ability of the Suffolk County's office, DA's office, to engage people who may have come into wrong contact around law enforcement to upgrade themselves in terms of citizenship.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the overall spirit and tenor of what now U.S. Attorney Rollins stood for in terms of not prosecuting less serious and lower level offenses, I absolutely stand in agreement with, and will continue. But no, I will not do it exactly the way she did. I believe that there's, and not through anyone's fault or anyone's wrongdoing, I believe there's been a conversation and a direction that has focused on charges and a formulaic sort of percentage-based approach to what we will or will not prosecute. I do not believe that that is the right focus. I believe the focus on the cases that we prosecute or don't prosecute should not be on the charges and how many of those charges we do or do not prosecute, but should be on the people and the individuals that are involved in that case. And we need to take a more human approach of understanding who the people are that are coming into our system that are catching these charges, and then what do we do with them. And so I don't believe in a hard and fast formulaic approach. I don't believe in, whether it's a reasonable doubt standard or whether it's a presumption of innocence standard or whether it's a presumption not to prosecute. That sends us in a direction that I don't think is appropriate. I think we should be looking at every single case on a case-by-case basis, and I think we should be focusing on the human beings that are involved in those cases to really lay hold of what the issues are in that particular case and how to address them. So once we get there, when someone is in our system, and I'm speaking just for low-level offenses, when we do this so that we can spend more time on more violent and more serious offenses. We don't want our system clogged with unnecessary cases. So when we take low-level offenses or less serious crimes that we want to find some alternative for prosecution for, now that we are focused on that human being, now that we are focused on them, and I think this answers your second question, then we use our community engagement, we use our resources, we use our relationships with communities to figure out what to do to help that person, because if all we do is shuffle them back out of our criminal system without doing anything for them, we don't solve any problems. They're coming back. If someone has a homelessness problem and that's why they're shoplifting 12 times in a year, if we don't figure out how to help them, give them some resources, give them some opportunity, help them get their feet up off the ground, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. If someone has a addiction issue and that's what's driving them into our system, we better make damn sure that we give them the treatment that they need, or they're going to keep coming back. If there's a young wayward person that has just made some immature and silly mistakes, they can keep coming back too, unless we get them some real mentorship and some real support from people in the community that can help them stay on the right path. So it's all about what we do with the human beings that are coming into our system. And when we look at the alternatives for prosecution, how we treat them and how we make sure they don't come back into our system. Once we do that, we can feel entirely comfortable with alternatives to prosecution. Once we do that, we can feel entirely comfortable with alternatives that will keep people from being ensnared in our criminal legal system and keep them from catching criminal records.
But forgive me, D.A. Hayden, I mean, the beauty of the system of the sort of the do not prosecute list is that it takes some of the resource problems off your plate, right? If you're talking about doing an individual case-by-case analysis of these low-level offenders, that's a tremendous resource drain on your office. Do you have the resources to do that?
I don't think it's a tremendous resource drain on our office. I think it's what we're called to do. I think it's what we're hired to do. I think it's what the community and the people and the citizens of Suffolk County demand for us to do in order to ensure that our criminal legal system is fair and just, and they keep our streets safe. You have every case gets looked at on a case-by-case basis, and should be. If you're declining to prosecute 3 out of 4 cases, you're still engaging in a case-by-case analysis. You're not just randomly throwing 4 cases up and going, oh, these 3 are going out and that one's going
Check
in.
the box.
Yeah.
You're looking at them case-by-case to make that decision. That case-by-case analysis is absolutely necessary. It goes on either way, and all I'm saying is that a formulaic approach to it's not the right way. A humanistic approach to it, looking at the people that are involved and how we handle them, is the way to do it.
Well, we have a lot of calls. The phones are blowing up. Dico, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good have a question for the new DA. And my question is this: how do I, as a registered voter, knows or doesn't know that you're a bootlick for the governor or any high-power politician? Because you talk a good game, but let's see you deliver.
Sure. Well, you're going to have to see me deliver, right? You
better lock your door.
And vote for me and elect me as your next DA, and I think you will see. No, in all seriousness, to answer that question, look, I've done this for 25 years. I've done it on all sides. I was a prosecutor for 11 years. I engaged in intervention and prevention strategies and alternatives to prosecution and diversion programming for juveniles. Talk to anyone who knows me from back in the day. Worked on returning citizens into our community and reentry initiatives, unlike any other prosecutor that ever has before. When you talk about criminal legal reform that is going on today, I take a backseat to no one in that respect. I've been doing it all my life. I did it all my years as a prosecutor. I was never a traditional prosecutor. I also spent 5 years. Little over 5 years, doing criminal defense work, representing clients in need in court on their criminal cases. So I have that experience as well. I've done both, and both have been incredibly valuable and have given me an incredible breadth and perspective. I've also been the chair of a state agency here, the Sex Offender Registry Board. And so I've run a state agency before. I know what that's like. I know how to do these things. I think that's why I was appointed. I was appointed not because I'm going to lick anyone's boots. I was appointed because I'm the best person to do this job and keep this community safe. I've been called to do this. It's always been my passion. It's always been my desire. I'm honored and humbled to do it. There's a balance that we have to engage in. We have to reform our criminal legal system, but we also have to remember that public safety is paramount, and we always have to remember that there's always a time where accountability will happen and need to happen. And those of us who are stewards over that accountability need to make sure that we are doing our jobs with compassion, with integrity, with honesty, with a measure of faith and balance. I believe in the power of redemption. I believe in forgiveness. I believe in the ability of one to change. And we have to work within a system that has appropriate levels of accountability, but also appropriate levels of compassion, forgiveness, and the ability to have our system be holistic and fair and just for everybody.
Okay, we have one caller before Jamal comes on. I told you the phones are ringing off the hook. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning, Ron, my friend. Good morning, Singer, my friend. And good morning, Kevin. My name's Priscilla Flint Banks. Kevin, I met you at the Ward 18 caucus. I know you probably don't remember me, but...
How are you?
I have a question. I want to ask you, do you think that the state should spend $50 million on building a new women's prison? And if you do think they should, why?
So I actually don't know anything about those plans or where that's happening. So it's an interesting question that you're asking me. It depends on. It could depend on a number of different factors. Is the old one going to be torn down? Is there a need for upgrade in the services that for women that unfortunately do have to spend some time in prison or in jail? Is it going to provide better comfort, better safety, better opportunities for rehabilitation, better resources for those women? If the answers to those questions are yes, then I would say that it probably does. If it's a matter of just building another one so that we can double the amount of women that we're going to incarcerate, then no, that would be absolutely ridiculous.
All right. Well, I don't know if it's to replace a new one. For what I don't know, but I think $50 million is a lot of money to spend on a women's prison when you can take that $50 million and do something more positive with it around women and wraparound services and things like that.
Well, all those things have to happen as well, right? And regardless of what happens there, I don't know, and forgive me that I don't know the particulars around the plans to build one. But if all those other things are not happening, then yeah, that would be an incredible waste. If you are not finding ways to rehabilitate, if you are not providing ways to find resources, if you're not finding ways to increase reentry efforts for people if they do have to go, how they return to the community, then yes, that would be I would say that would be a waste.
We have another caller. Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Caller, you're live on Boston Black News. Jamal?
Yeah, good morning. This is Jamal Crawford calling again. I'll try to be brief, DA Hayden. I had put this to your predecessors before. And, I lived through, Newman Flanagan, Ralph Martin, and all this. So the first thing is, what are your plans to strengthen and continue the work of the Conviction Integrity Unit in light of, wrongful convictions that, obviously predate your tenure, but for those that may be incarcerated wrongfully, to take another look at those cases.
Sure.
Another point would be, if you would be willing to do a study that would detail how many police officers, your office comes in contact with via, drunk driving, domestic violence, whatnot, for the various cities that you cover. I think that would be an interesting study just to indicate how many times officers, they themselves, are on the other side of the law. And lastly, something that I've been dealing with for decades now, I wonder if any, in light of what happened with the Catholic Church, what are your thoughts about sexual abuse in the Black church?
Well, that's a lot to unwrap, but we'll probably have to get you to do that another time. But you can go. You can hit it.
Let me see. So let me see if I remember it all. So first of all, the Integrity Review Board of our office is vitally important work that actually and definitely will continue. Anytime we have a scenario where the passage of time, new evidence, DNA evidence, maybe something that someone did wrong during the course of the original proceedings illuminates the fact that an injustice may have been done. That absolutely positively has to be addressed. So we've actually made some efforts to strengthen our Integrity Review Board. One of the things that we've done is we've added an appellate attorney specifically assigned to the Integrity Review Board, because what we've seen and learned is that all of these cases always involve intense layers of appellate review. They've all been through an appellate process, sometimes once, twice, even 3 times. And in the past, there have been situations where our appeals unit and the Integrity Review Board the left hand hasn't known what the right hand is doing. And so the appeals process is so important to it that we brought that in. We've also brought in another high-level homicide prosecutor to assist with some of these cases. We've added some more processing layers of review. Every integrity review matter before it is brought to me now will also go through my first assistant. My first assistant has over 20 years of experience as a criminal defense attorney, so we've added that layer to the process as well. It's so important. Secondly, with regards to a study of cases, we'd have to take a look at that, but I think the broader answer to your question, and I think the point that needs to be made, is that when it comes to any sort of wrongdoing by either prosecutors or police officers, that has to be taken very, very seriously. We need to be held to a higher standard, need to be above reproach, and any sort of wrongdoing, either negligent or rising to the level of criminality by law enforcement or people in my office, can't be accepted, won't be tolerated, will be handled and appropriately prosecuted whenever necessary, and we will continue to do that, and we do that. As far as so I worked at the Sex Offender Registry Board for a number of years. Sexual assault is insidious, and it's dark. And I say, when I say that, what I mean by that is, it is not easily detected. It often goes unknown, unspoken, unaware. And when it comes out, it can be incredibly tragic, incredibly painful, can cause, obviously, incredible trauma. We take those cases very seriously, obviously. I have a huge breadth of experience with regards to those matters based on my experience at the Sex Offender Registry Board. And we have an incredible team at the DA's office that knows how to prosecute and handle those cases, handle our victims with care. That's vitally, vitally important, and really get to the root of those cases. They are handled very differently.
Thank you, Jamal. We have a few minutes left here at Boston Black News. Thank you, DA, for coming. You want to have final words? And why should people vote for you on September 26th? I believe that's the date.
Sure. So, look, public service has always has been my calling. I believe I got it from my father, Bob Hayden, who, was the executive director at Metco, assistant superintendent of Boston Public Schools at one point in time before his passing, the preeminent black historian here in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. There was a time where if you wanted information about black history, people would say you only need to call one person, Bob Hayden, because he knew it backwards and forwards, right? He was on the board and the president of NAACP. He inspired my desire for public service. Without repeating, the resume of my actual experience in my career, I will tell you, I'm a husband of a wonderful wife who's from Barbados. We have two wonderful boys who live in this city. They're 15 and 13. They're black and brown and darker than I am. So
They play lacrosse?
They play lacrosse, and basketball and football.
All right, athletes.
Football as well. I'm always mindful of them. I've raised them in Rosendale for 20 years. Been a member of Jubilee Christian Church and a faithful member there and a leader at that church for 25 years. Served on the board of Youth Options Unlimited, which services at-risk youth and empowers them to succeed in the workforce and the community. And so these are other parts of who I am and part of my collective experience that I think give me a very balanced, compassionate, and holistic approach.
Thank you, D.A. Hayden, singer, GBH. We'll be right back. 9 o'clock hour goes by real fast.